I suspect when John Bedini shared with us the John Schlezeka files that are sold over at energyfromthevacuum.com or .net, he shared one of the files. See, John Schlezeka went around investigating various alternative or free energy devices or protocols, and then he apparently would report them to his superior or allowed somebody else to view his files, and then the subject in question would become suppressed immediately afterwards. And he got stuck with the information, and we never got to see the light of day of that alternative technology. Well, back in either the 50s, I think it was the 70s, in the 70s, somebody was making a battery commercially available, a primary battery in which you would haul your ass into the service station and get your anode, your aluminum anodes, replaced with a new sheet of aluminum because they kept degrading. It was designed as a wedge, a triangular wedge-shaped degradation slot, and it was a rectangular block that would shape itself into a wedge as it degraded at the bottom. But at the top end, it would weight itself down and supply aluminum to this primary battery that never needed recharging. And nothing more was said about its technology. Well, I have reason to suspect that if we take a diode and turn it into a negative resistor, it becomes a battery, a primary battery. And traditionally, 100 years ago, it was possible to make a diode, an electrolytic-based diode, using aluminum as the anode and some other material. Traditionally, lead was used as the cathode, and the electrolyte was either baking soda or borax. Now, if we look at the periodic chart of the table of elements, bismuth is right next door to the right, as we look at, on its left, but our right, of lead. It's one notch higher in atomic number than lead. Now, we know from Louis Kervran, who wrote the book back in the 70s in French, and then it was translated into English, Biological Transmutations. You can probably find a copy on Amazon. It's a life-changing book because it speaks of transmutations of the elements occurring all the time. Animal, vegetable, mineral, in every kingdom imaginable, it happens all the time. Now, in physiologies of living creatures, it normally happens only when the creature is healthy. If the creature is sickly, it doesn't happen. And might be one reason why the creature is sickly. It takes energy to do the thing because it takes enzymes to act as the catalyst to make the biological transmutation occur. But in some instances, that's not the case. Sometimes it happens chemically or crystallographically in the mineral kingdom. And what he said was, it's simple addition and subtraction of atomic number. It's really bizarre. So if you want to change calcium into magnesium, magnesium is, let's see if I can remember how that works. Magnesium is the heavier, isn't it the heavier? No, it's the lighter. Well, let's do something I know. Oh, I remember now. Sodium. Okay, magnesium is one atomic number up from sodium. So if you extract one singular unit, atomic element unit number, if you add it to sodium, you get magnesium. In other words, if you add a hydrogen ion, you get magnesium. If you subtract a hydrogen ion from magnesium, you get sodium. Likewise, calcium versus potassium. If you add hydrogen to potassium, you get calcium. If you subtract hydrogen from calcium, you get potassium. Did I say that right? If you add it, subtract it. Okay. Now, vertically, the quadrature of sodium, magnesium, and potassium and calcium is oxygen. So if you add oxygen ion, you do the numbers. You just do the math. If you add an ion of oxygen to sodium, you get potassium. And if you subtract oxygen from potassium, you get sodium. So there are other possibilities. That's just one option. I found that silica and calcium is a possible avenue for transmutation, either bidirectionally or unidirectionally. And there are other possibilities. We can think of all kinds. And there are also certain unions that always like to take place, such as between aluminum and silica, which is very interesting. Anywho, getting back to the subject. So bismuth is right next door, one notch up from lead. And we know lead batteries are commonplace, and the diode that I'm describing of 100 years ago, the electrolytic diode, using lead traditionally as the cathode, although you can use any alternative metal other than aluminum as the cathode, is right next door to bismuth. Now, I had the hunch that if we use bismuth as the cathode, we might get negative resistance. And then this morning I realized, well, what is a negative resistant diode? It's a battery. It's a primary non-rechargeable battery in which one of the electrodes gets eaten up. Usually it's the anode, I think, and you replace it. Now, there is a story going around the internet that Tesla already had a primary battery and it used zinc as the corrodable, extinguishable electrode of choice. And he just had extra sheets of zinc in the trunk and he replaced them as needed every 500 miles. Took 5 minutes, a child could do it, and away he'd go. And there would be enough sheets of zinc in the trunk to supply his batteries for his electric car for 1 year. That's pretty cool. And the cost of zinc versus the cost of rechargeable batteries in our current day EVs is ridiculous. Difference is like no comparison. So I just suspect this is one avenue of approach for a primary battery, a non-rechargeable negative resistant diode. You know, they're equivalent terms basically. And I think that's maybe the secret behind the Amman brothers, because when I simulate the Amman brothers, it's hard to do it for any lengthy duration, but if I do succeed, I find out the thing is not over unity, it just wears down. So they did say some minerals were involved. There was wire, there was iron, and there was minerals. Now the iron is because of Nathan Stubblefield and Oliver Heaviside, in which we wrap an insulated copper core cable with iron ribbon or iron wire to boost the magnetic field traveling down the iron to go in parallel with the electrostatic field traveling down the copper cable that never diminishes, to speak of, but it's always the electromagnetic that wants to diminish, and then you don't get an electrical signal at the other end of the wire, or in this case, a coil, such as the coil of the coils in a motor, an electric motor. So we have to design our electric motors a little differently to incorporate iron wrapping around the copper wire that's wound on the rotors or stators or both of the electric motor to help boost the magnetic component. It's not enough to have an iron core. You have to have iron distributed throughout the copper windings as well. But then there's the question of, okay, now what do we use as our energy source? And it's possible that's what the Amman brothers did in 1921. So that's just my hunch. Thought I'd share it with you. That bismuth, anyway, I won't repeat myself. You can re-watch the video.